Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Oh, so annoying. Oh my God, it's like
Do you know? No, but there's a reason. There's a reason. Because what am I?
An idiot.
A real pain.
Oh God.
Did you get it? I'm a real pain in the arse. Okay, this is a review of A Real Pain, the buddy road movie comedy starring Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. And before we get going on this film, let's just have a little moment just to swim in Lake Culkin and then Lake Eisenberg. Kieran Culkin, obviously we all know so well from Succession. That's my mother flushing the toilet there.
Another real pain.
Another real pain. I'm a big fan of Kieran Culkin. I can't say I remember him or seen him in anything else.
I haven't, and why not? Because he's so fantastic. But you always say he's very, very family orientated, isn't he? Doesn't like to say too much work.
Me and my mum,
he was in a lot of stuff as a kid.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was in Home Alone. He was one of the kids in Home Alone. I mean, me and my mum had the great fortune of seeing him and Jesse Eisenberg talking about this film at the Tribeca Film Festival.
God.
And one of the main reasons Kieran Culkin nearly didn't do this film was because it was in Poland. He was like, didn't want to be away from home, didn't want to be away from his wife and his kids, and he didn't want to shoot anything for longer than 8 days. He's really family.
He's our kind of guy, but that's how you keep your family together.
Absolutely. And Jesse Eisenberg, interestingly, my mum was stumbling around in the lift, bless her. She was a bit disorientated. And because of her stumbling around in the lift at the Tribeca...
How come we're in a lift now?
Well, because I'm going to say to you, my mum stumbling around in a lift prevented Jesse Eisenberg getting into the lift with us. Because as I was looking beyond my mum, I heard all these women behind me going, oh, Jesse, get in. And I was like, my mum was like, what's going on? What's going on?
And you would have got in the lift with you.
Anyway, no, it was really interesting to hear them both talk about this film. So Kieran Culkin we know really well from Succession, child actor, but has been in the business for years. Jesse Eisenberg, you're massive
Maddie
fans.
doesn't like him.
What?
No, I mean, Jesse Eisenberg, I'm trying to think, what will people most know him from? There's things like Zombieland, which are really quite mainstream.
Zombieland, what was it called? The Social Network?
Social Network, in which he played Mark Zuckerberg.
Wasn't that the first thing he did, I think?
That was the thing where he really landed. Yeah, he was...
I've never seen that.
It's great.
Hey, I thought it was where you have.
No, I haven't.
It's great.
So when it came out that you talked.
If you haven't seen Fleischman in Trouble, his series on Prime TV, sensational.
He's written this though, as well.
And he's written this too. I mean, he's
the Woody Allen. He's
totally.
like a
he manifests
decent,
decent
Woody Allen.
A sort of neurotic Jewish comedy. That's his shtick. And really, watching the two of them on stage was watching Neurosis meet Neurosis, spilling into Neurosis. Because at the end of the day, they didn't really want to be there or take questions and just wanted to get out as quickly as they come in. So as I say, it's a road movie. It's a buddy movie. They play cousins. It's kind of pretty much shot in real time, isn't it? You feel it's a six-day tour, and it feels like they've shot it across 6 days, which, given Culkin's desire to not be away from his family, it probably was. It's also produced just significantly, I think, by Emma Stone. But what I love also about it was really interesting. I mean, I don't want to bang on about an interview or a chat that I saw, but so much of what they said in the chat made so much sense seeing the film. Because really, what this film, and you wouldn't necessarily know this watching it, is Jesse Eisenberg discovering Kieran Culkin as an actor and as a performer opposite him. So a lot of that, seeing him in that first way, which is a part of this film, was real, which I thought was quite a clever technique.
Because they've got such different acting styles, haven't they?
So what's the concept? What's the
the
concept? What are they doing? What's the plot?
The plot is they are travelling, they've grown up together, they're cousins, they've grown up together, and their beloved grandmother has died and has left them some money to travel and see the house where she grew up.
In Warsaw.
In Warsaw. So they join a group, tour group, which honestly, when they walk up to meet them, it's just cringe, double cringe, wasn't it? You just think, oh, I'd rather die. Yeah. I'd rather die. I can do that to them. And so they travel with this group, splitting away from the group towards the end to go and see their grandmother's house. Yeah. And you're sort of looking back through you're finding out about them and they're finding out about each other, but like almost looking through their childhood.
Yeah. And so it's very much a sort of shared pilgrimage in memory of their nan.
That's the word. Yeah.
An important detail in this is that their gran obviously was Jewish. They're both Jewish. And one of the other reasons she left Poland was to escape the concentration camps. It wasn't necessarily Auschwitz, but she needed to escape Poland before the Nazis got her. And so this is interesting in terms of this is a real Oscar favourite. That last year we had The Zone of Interest, which was an Auschwitz film. And this, in many regards, this really is a Holocaust film. because it's about the two very younger Jewish generation reflecting back on what their nan went through. And so there's a lot of talk in this film, which I think for us, was really sort of resonated given the current situation in Gaza, that, genocide's talked about, Holocaust is talked about a lot, prejudice, loss, suffering.
And also the trauma that can go into the DNA.
Yeah.
That's that I wish, in a way, I wish they'd gone into that a little bit more. It was touched on beautifully, but I think I'd have liked a bit more of that.
Yeah. So so it got going. It started with them meeting, Jesse Eisenberg meeting Kieran Culkin in an airport. And he's very sort of shambolic and shifty and fidgety. And I remember Jesse saying he started doing this scratching thing as soon as we started filming the first thing. And he said, all I kept doing was just, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And you actually see that in the film, don't you?
And he's very fidgety and itchy. And so we get a real sense that Kieran Culkin isn't wholly happy.
Well, I felt straight away, I thought, oh my God, he's living in the airport. And I thought because he had a fantastic, I don't know if you remember, right at the beginning, he had a very staring off look in his eyes. And I just thought, what is he haunted by? What's happened? I just thought something dreadful had happened.
I don't know about if something dreadful had happened, but it's pretty prevalent right from the start that there's something not right with him.
Yeah,
but I really like how the whole way through the film, really, we don't exactly know what it is. I really liked how it was obvious that there was something tormenting him, but that we were never really sure.
He was so fidgety, he was uneasy in his body, he was uneasy in himself. He's that sort of busy, frenetic, frantic, fussy, kind of full of kind of quips and one-liners, but it's all about holding your arm's length, it's about pushing away, it's about kind of avoiding, and it's about avoiding all, obviously, whatever pain and issues he's going through.
Well, I felt very quickly, like the character had, and I don't know if he's ever discussed this, had bipolar.
Right.
Because his dips and his highs were so
manic.
Similar, to others that I've seen with bipolar, and he was heartbreaking for me right from the beginning. Very annoying, wasn't he? Like one minute you couldn't stand him, and the next minute you just loved him. He just And just through Jesse's eyes of astonishment and bewilderment.
Yes.
Yeah.
I find Jesse Eisenberg, what I like about Jesse Eisenberg, he does do that sort of neurotic, self-deprecating, Jewish sad walk.
It's like all that you can do is feel absolutely distraught for me, just seeing me walk from A to B.
Yeah, but I thought they did a really good job of, they're cousins and they've obviously been closer and then they haven't seen so much of each other. And then we discover much further in the film that something awful has happened to Kieran Culkin's character. And I really felt we were looking at Kieran through Jesse's eyes. The film did a really good job of us really kind of trying to, we were very much put in Jesse's position. Because it started, didn't it, with the wonderful phone calls. I won't leave another message. This is my last voicemail. I'll meet you there. But he does another voice message. And,
so
I thought his nervous energy, I thought Jesse Eisenberg, they're both heartbreaking characters throughout. But their heartbreaking natures, what makes this film, I think, really neat, though it's a kind of Holocaust film, that makes it sound potentially really heavy, and there are heavy moments in it. It's dealt with incredibly lightly.
Yeah, I think they covered all themes really neatly.
Yeah. It wasn't laboured, it wasn't worthy.
Too much of one thing. It wasn't just a comedy, but it also wasn't just, really heavy.
Well, it was sort of natural wit that people might have. And
but it did that really, because some things go for natural wit and it doesn't really succeed.
And I think it did a really good job, like that first scene where they sit down and they meet the rest of the tour group. It did a really good balancing act between the sort of almost documentary-like. So these were real characters who weren't really overperforming. They weren't performing, if I think of the black guy who's converted to Judaism and they
were so good, those actors.
So
and
good.
The direction was so good of that scene.
And the tour guide, the whole dynamic.
Yeah, because I was a bit worried when I saw the tour. I thought, I'm not going to like this. I'm going to get actors that aren't that. There's going to be one or two that aren't that good.
Yeah, it could have been really risky to do something like that, because it could just feel really...
And you really you fell in love with some of the tour guide specifically.
I think the tour guide was brilliant, because I think that part as well, it would have been so easy for it to have just not hit the mark and been a bit kind of
naff.
Yeah, or just awkward.
Functional and just
But I thought that the actor did such a good job. He was so sweet. He actually broke my heart as well.
Yeah, because he was kind of geeky, but he didn't overstep the geekiness. He was, because at first I was
like, he did go a bit British film
British,
comedy.
Yeah. Sometimes I almost always have a problem with when you've got a lot of Americans in a film and then there's a British accent in there. Even if it's an authentic British accent, it just sounds
ludicrous. It starts sounding ridiculous.
It just sounds awful, but he did. It didn't. I didn't really even.
No, and I thought that was a real tribute to that actor's performance because it became
was
more
very
and more
rooted.
real. Rooted.
He was
exactly.
inhabiting. He wasn't
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah.
But just even though we've said that they're cousins.
Yeah.
For me, it was sibling. I was watching sibling rivalry.
Yeah,
That
yes.
would be
More
like
like
my.
brothers.
That would be like my headline of the film for me was watching siblings just working and the complete miscommunication that siblings can have, whilst also at the same time having incredible roots rooted into each other, and an incredible sort of almost like telepathic understanding of each other, but then no understanding at all.
Yes.
And that fascinated me. Their relationship just fascinated me in every frame.
I mean, there were so many moments in this film that shouldn't have worked that did. And one, for example, was, first of all, there was the meeting of the tour guides. But then there was the moment where there was, I think, the Russian sculpture, and Kieran Culkin's character kind of mobilises everyone to strike stupid poses in front of this sculpture. And at first, it's funny, the scene did a really good job of making me feel as awkward as Jesse Eisenberg was about, this doesn't feel right. He's getting everyone to be goofy and silly, and the scene evolves and develops. Everyone starts to hand their phones to Jesse Eisenberg to say, forgetting the kind of awkwardness, silliness, and there was a genuine childlike fun and fizz to that scene where you felt the charm of Kieran Culkin. And maybe, in a sense, the inappropriateness of what he was doing, given the kind of nature of the sculpture he was in front of. The best parts of this film, I thought, were when Jesse Eisenberg, you could see Jesse go, this guy has a different way of seeing the world.
It's like he thought he was doing the right thing by saying we must respect this
Yes.
statue and everyone will agree with me. That's what happened a lot all the
Yes.
way through the film. And then his charming, chaotic cousin straight brother blows everything that Jesse believes out the water, and you've got all these people on a pilgrimage, to Auschwitz, all mucking about in front of this, this statue that's supposed to mean so much. But I found that was a perfect example of the love-hate relationship that I had with Kieran's character, because it felt like he was stabbing at Jesse and showing him how much fun he was, and you're so stuck in the mud. But I was constantly conflicted on that. I didn't know what he was doing.
Interesting?
I thought,
that's so
I thought
weird.
because he said come on, and he didn't. And he went, you come.
No, I
It's
think
very
it started. I think
sibling-
you're right. I think it started like that. But what I thought
then
was
it
joyful in the
turned.
scene was how Jesse reacted as if he was doing it like that. But then by the end, all the cameras came down, and you could see him looking at this, thinking, "Is there a different way of appreciating things?"
But I also, once I saw that one as well, I was sure it was bipolar. I
Right,
was like,
yes.
this is bipolar. This is your
Yeah.
classic, this huge amount of play that can come out. And then fairly quickly after that, I think we see him turn a bit on the group.
Yeah.
I think it's quite soon after that. Yes,
Well, yeah, and I liked what I think, Maddie, you said when you came out afterwards, we were talking about it, and you said you quite liked the way they didn't over-explain all the bits, but although with them for 6 days. Like, for example, there's a moment where he goes missing for the night, doesn't he? I mean, Kieran Culkin just
He goes off with the woman.
He goes off with the woman, exactly. But there's that sort of sense of, but nothing's particularly answered. You just go with the flow.
I love films like that.
And I also like the way in which the reaction of the group was authentic, because there was an older guy in the group who found him fucking annoying and had no time
He was
for
really
him.
good, that guy. He didn't have many
He was
lines, but he
so
was so
good.
good, wasn't he?
They were
The older guy.
Yeah,
He really was. What did you make of the guy? Yeah, the black guy who's himself kind of escaped from a genocide.
Yeah, and has what's it called?
Converted.
Converted
to
to
Judaism, and talks about the beauty of Judaism, which I found that really, really moving.
Yeah, you see, he was such a lovely actor, the way he
Such a lovely actor, and he was so gentle, and he's everything that you hope religion is, where it's non-judgmental. He was very open and giving to everybody, wasn't he? And he didn't get upset or chippy about anything. It was such a beautiful character, his character.
It really was.
And I love the way all the Jewish group were all like so impressed that he'd converted. They were like, whoa.
Well, no, but even Jesse, as they're walking alongside him at one point, and goes, so what, you do the whole thing? You do the whole religion thing? And he goes to you, and he goes, no.
I recommend it. And he was like, what, to me or to like everybody? He's like, no, specifically
To you. That's right. But I also thought he did a really good job of even tackling that tricky topic of, not that there is a commercialisation of going to concentration camps, and it wasn't Auschwitz in the end. I forget the name of the actual one they go to. But the moment on the train where Kieran Culkin can't get to grips with the fact that they're all basically
First
on
class.
a tour, first class. I thought that was quite a powerful scene.
It was a very powerful scene, and again for me it was a very mental health scene because
Yeah.
he
really
dived
nice.
into such a terrible place, and
It was
he demanded
too much.
everyone else felt the same,
Yeah.
and he stormed off. And yet later he's in first class and he's like, oh, what's wrong with this? So I
Yes.
love that because that's also the contradiction of that kind of
Yeah.
thought anyway, isn't it?
I mean, the reason why I loved Kieran's character so much is because it wasn't just simply that he was like this vibrant, charismatic, likable person. He could be really disliked.
Inappropriate. Yeah.
Like I hated him in the scene where he was really rude to the tour guide. Like, I
Yes.
was like, why are you being so mean?
That was such a powerful scene.
Yeah.
So unnecessary. So but I always love when you have like a main character that isn't just likable and you don't, because they're real.
And that you're almost left confused about what you feel about them.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Then I also loved Jesse's character so much because just also him being apologetic on behalf of Kieran's character the whole time was just so funny to me.
Yeah.
His nervous energy was just...
That sibling thing of feeling responsible for
Yes.
everything. your
It's really
sibling
interesting as
does.
well because
Yes.
I related to both of them because I feel like I can be like Kieran's character
That's
sometimes
interesting.
where I'm like...
The mania.
Yeah. But even like when he's not so nice, like I related to him sometimes. He's like crash out moments. But at the same time I related so much to Jesse's character. If I'm around somebody that's perhaps like me sometimes, that's like him, then I get into that thing of being like, really, I'm sorry, just ignore. So it was really weird. Like I related to both of them,
wow.
even though they were like very different.
Yes.
A lot, I don't know, they were similar at the same time.
Something that hadn't struck me right at the beginning was the idea that he might have been living at the airport. I just hadn't had that thought.
No,
I
that
didn't
didn't
interrogate
come
that.
in.
Yeah. I very much
because
got...
it was the warm strawberry yogurt.
Yeah, I loved
it.
it.
Was the rucksack on
I
his
just
back.
genuinely
it was
thought
the
he'd-
dirty t-shirt round the top.
No, it all makes sense now, but I genuinely thought that when he was there, it was like, because what I instantly thought was like, he's obviously got some kind of manic thing, like some sort of mania that's made him maybe get there like 2 days before. Like, I didn't think that he was living.
Well, that's what I mean, really, that he'd been there for days for
Yes.
some reason. I don't know that I necessarily
No,
think
but
so.
yeah, I think he might have been there for longer.
Yeah.
No, and the end is incredibly heartbreaking. And really, I mean, the weird thing about Kieran Culkin as a performer, he reminds me massively of the frustration I get sometimes around, say, our dog Toffee. She's constantly busy and I want her to relax and stop and pause so I can look at her in a more meaningful way, but she doesn't let you. And with him, I sometimes find myself wanting... He's the kind of guy that I imagine if I was in a room and he was asleep, I'd want to look at him because he'd stay still.
Right, and there's a lovely moment with Jesse when he does that. When
Absolutely,
he is
absolutely. And I thought that was a really key moment. There was another moment where he took a long drag on his spliff when they were on the top of one of the various hotels, which was so utterly heartbreaking and moving.
It's the last one.
Yeah, and that interior. And so for the last half an hour of this film actually took me on, not on a manic dive, but I felt such relatability in Kieran's... It was only at that point that I reflected on the fact, oh my God, this is the ebb and flow of a bipolar person. We're going through
Well,
the
that's what I
manic
wanted to ask
episodes.
you, because of course, I mean, people might not yet know that you do have bipolar. Did you connect with it on that
Well,
level?
yes, by the end, but it's weird because like you've described, it's quite normal. It's like I find addicts interesting. I find people who are nuts kind of fascinating. Yeah. I find erratic behaviour compelling and slightly intoxicating. So I found him all these things. Doesn't mean I didn't see where he was irritating to Jesse and the group, and where he was insensitive. But even in that moment with the tour guide, when he said what he actually thought of the tour guide, and then actually the tour guide took that and took it constructively, I thought, oh wow, even in being inappropriate, there's something positive that can come from it. What I felt by the end of it was, and it was really heartbreaking, was that moment as he was in the... Sorry.
It's okay.
No, God, I wasn't expecting that.
That's good filmmaking, and it stirs up stuff.
What I really related to was that sense that, as you rightly identified, Nadia, at the end when they say goodbye, Jesse feels for him and he's connected to him, and a closeness and a proximity has been built, and he's seen perhaps, there are other ways of doing things, and a lovely buddy movie. They've brought something different out of each other, but fundamentally he wanted to go home and he could go home, and he leaves him at the airport. It reminded me very much of how I felt. That's not what's happened to me all the time, but that feeling that you feel you're too much for people. Even if you're not, it doesn't really matter. But if you feel you're too much for someone, and actually you're in the process of curtailing what you are, because you know that if you actually go to what you are,
mania,
positive or negative, that you're going to be too much for people. I thought that one still moment, and maybe that was a choice and a decision that Jesse did a really good job as director here to hold. That final shot allowed you to go, and that's why I think it hit me like that. I was like,
I mean,
it's
that
so
is
alone.
literally,
Because that's how it started as well.
Yeah. No, but before that, it literally broke my heart when he said, "Oh, do you want to come back to you can see the baby doing this," and his wife's name, I can't remember what it was, but we'd love to see you, and you see him go, and that'd be great, but no, I've got stuff to do, and you see for a split second that Jesse knows he hasn't got anything to do, and he's relieved that he's not going to come back.
Because I want to say, like, one of the most powerful scenes in the film for me was the moment when they're in the restaurant and Kieran's character's gone and Jesse just kind of like splurts out all of this stuff.
So
well done, because the thing I was saying to Dad the other day, that like movies kind of run the risk sometimes with a monologue like that it just feels like, the emotional monologue with a bit of an explanation as to like what the situation is. But I didn't even have like a second where I was sat there thinking, oh, here we go, here's like the monologue that's going to make us understand him a bit better. It was so believable that because his character was so like, it had such nervous energy and tight, and was like very put together. The fact that it all blurted out was so realistic, and even his like, he apologises after, just being like, sorry, I'm oversharing, and it's just so well done, and he performed it so beautifully.
And he made a really interesting directorial choice on that scene. I don't know if you noticed that the camera for the one time went down the other end of the table. It was on a wide shot, and it was a slow in-camera zoom, not a track or anything. And that was a very stylistically different choice to anything else. But you're right, what sometimes happens with those emotional, it's like most films have awful scenes of explication. This is why this is happening. But then you can get in films like this emotional explication. The reason he's felt that, and they did it. And in a way, that's what this scene did do. It gave us the context of what happened to Kieran. But it did it so naturally.
And even like, he kind of touches on like, even that he feels a kind of guilt that he's been given the wife and the life that he has. And somebody like him is that he tries to kill himself, there's some sleeping pills on the sofa in the basement. And like we were saying as well, that moment where Jesse's character says what the grandmother said, like, a generation is either living in a basement on the mum's sofa in the basement, something like that. And Kieran's character said she said that because I lived in mum's basement, and in fact that hurts so much.
So much.
Because we know, like, from whatever it is that's said in the film, that he had a very, very close relationship with the grandmother, and is like very beaten up at the fact that she's passed away. So you just have that moment of like, wow, that woman that he respects so much and loves so much, and it defended a couple of times if Jesse said anything, said that about you, didn't she? And it's just like, that broke my heart, that bit.
Actually, just think about, because we haven't spoken about it, what we felt about the concentration camp scene.
Say that it was so powerful.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! So powerful. There are two reactions.
So powerful.
The reactions, but also I just feel like the way that it was.
It was done in such a way.
The way they filmed the actual concentration camp, because they did it very respectfully. Didn't feel like, we're going to plant in like a really emotional, heavy section film. It was just done really respectfully, but then it was just haunting. You kind of felt like you were there.
And I also thought it was a really interesting moment for the performances of the actors in the tour group. They were incredible there, because they were all, bearing in mind they're on the fringes of the main sort of dialogue and action. They're always there. And you just saw this resonate and land for them all in their own different ways. And interestingly, from the perspective of obviously the current crisis in Israel, in Gaza, the genocide that's happening there, it's not a film that prevents you from getting on board with how significant the experience of what the Jews have gone through, but it also allows you to extrapolate from it, a little bit like The Zone of Interest did, to think on the current situation. It didn't feel like this was an exclusively Jewish film about just the Jewish experience. And I think that's where the black character in there was really well placed, because I think he broadened the idea that genocide can happen outside. But I thought it was interesting that they'd already striven to kind of reach the idea of genocide, to reach beyond just the Jewish people of World War II.
And of course, as we know, that we campaign for, Gaza, and we also know that, yesterday I was on the march and marched with many Jewish people that said, never again was meant for everyone.
Exactly.
And this breaks our heart, and would have broken my grandmother's heart, who went through the Holocaust and all of that. So it was a very emotional film for us, I think, as a family in so many different ways. People, this isn't about thinking, oh, we can't feel for this because we're feeling for this. No, because like human beings, humanitarians, don't want this suffering for anyone.
And I think that's really important. And I think partly because it was possibly made before October the 7th, this does allow you, anyone going through the experience of what the Palestinians have gone through, catharsis. It doesn't, you don't feel like you're piggybacking your grief on top of. This allows you to go through that. I was feeling and thinking so much about the current crisis and the injustices and the unfairnesses and what have you, and the repetitions of certain treatments, and yet at the same time the sanctity of what happened to these two boys' grandmother is precious. Beautifully,
and the trauma that they carry just in their DNA.
Exactly.
But also, I didn't realise that the ashes of like.
I didn't. I mean, that was such a shocking shot.
Yeah, there's only.
The dome.
Is that what it was though? Was it?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they don't explain anything really.
No, that's also what I liked how.
Yes.
So obviously we have the moment where Kieran says to the tour guide, "I'm sorry, you're like over-explaining too much. You're not leaving room for us to silently."
Which is a great fucking
Which was a great
line.
thing to have in as well. Just broke my heart because he was so
To the
sweet.
tour guide.
So the tour guide isn't Jewish, and he's
No.
like, you can tell he's really trying to be like.
You just keep
"Obviously,
giving
I'm
us
not,
factoids.
He's on the eggshell.
So sweet.
Because I could say the wrong
he doesn't-
thing.
yeah. So, but what that led us to when we do go to the concentration camp.
Yes.
The whole bit was in complete silence, which I thought. I mean, they didn't even put music over
No.
it, which is kind of why it made me feel like I was there seeing it as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kieran's
Kieran's reaction
Oh,
afterwards
dear.
as well was really.
Yeah.
and then again in the coach.
Visceral.
Yeah, when he was crying. Yeah.
But let's go in summary on the film. Let's move to what I thought was a beautifully played final moment where they eventually get to their grandmother's house, which, as Kieran rightly observes, is very, very underwhelming.
Well, it's not the final moment, it's the moment before the final terribly
Yes.
sad moment, which this part of it makes that end of the film so much
the end of their
sadder,
sort of
doesn't
departure.
it?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
they connect in such a boyish way.
Yeah, and so there's this tradition, Jewish tradition of placing a stone on top of a grave or on a gravestone. So they thought they'd do the same on the doorstep
And how
of
underwhelmed they
their
were
nan's
about.
house. And not only is their nan's house really fucking boring, they've also got a really kind of
I
rough
loved him.
old
He was
man
brilliant.
leaning down over a balcony going, "What the fuck are you doing down there?"
Well, no, they needed a young guy to come out and
Yeah.
translate everything. It was so good.
The awkwardness of that
That's
scene.
so awkward and ridiculous and silly.
But
I have
ridiculous,
to say,
but so real. Like,
Yeah, but
that's what
I mean.
There's
That's
so
what I mean.
be somebody that comes out
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
"Oi, can you not?"
the ridiculousness of life is what I mean
Yeah.
to say. But when they did put that rock on the doorstep, I did think, oh God, it's probably an old one.
Someone's
It's
gonna
going to come
shit that
out.
one.
Someone like Nanny Di
And
coming
then
out.
that was the problem. So I would say to my friends, I would talk about this film. I wouldn't necessarily say you've got to see it because I don't think it's for everybody.
Right.
Simply because a lot of people, that's not enough, a film like that.
Right.
For us, we just love that investigation of the
Oh, right,
relationships. It's like a relationship film, isn't it? So I would say, I would tell them all about it, and I would say, I was just blown away by the performances and everything. So I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is for everyone.
Okay.
A lot of people would say it's slow. I didn't think it was slow at all, but people will. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I
now.
didn't think it was.
Okay.
Some people will.
And what would you say?
I was really excited about this just because, I mean, I'd watched quite a lot of interviews with
Yeah, you
either
had,
both
didn't
of
you?
them or just Kieran Culkin leading up to it. So I can't imagine how excited you were
No,
actually
it's
seeing them talk
stupidly
about it.
excited,
But I
yeah.
got
God.
excited just from seeing it. Even though I haven't seen that much with Kieran in, like, he's just something about him so addictive.
Very special.
Yeah. So, and I really, really, really wasn't disappointed. I think I don't know what I was going in expecting because I like that the trailer really didn't give much away at all. I realised once I was in there, I was like, I don't actually know where this is going to go. It was a
Yeah.
lot sadder than I thought it was going to be. So I was
Yeah.
like, no, to prepare myself. It was really nice to see those kind of still and sadder moments with Kieran as well, because I feel like, well, like you said, because he's got that chaotic energy.
Yeah.
And I felt like there were quite a few points where they paused with him. I mean, there was when he was sleeping, but there was the beginning and the end of him
Yeah.
staring, and then there was that lovely moment when they do their introductions on the tour
Yes.
to the tour people, and he talks about his nan, and then he just has like a moment
Yeah.
where he's trying not to cry,
Yeah.
and it like literally broke my heart. So all
Yeah.
of that stuff was just so. They're both just such watchable actors. Like I could watch them all day, and it's not something I because I'm at drama school now, so it's quite cool because a lot of people actually like see films and stuff. And I was talking to this girl who saw it, and she like absolutely loved it. Like she was like, it's just, she thought everything about it was perfect, like us. So I feel like it is something. It's something I would recommend to my drama school friends.
Well, would you recommend? No, so it's interesting, isn't it? I do think it's a particular kind of person that will like this film.
Yeah, emotionally.
It's not like
ready.
I'm always really surprised when there is no real action. People.
I remember some of my friends didn't like not drama school friends, but
Banshees.
some friends hated Banshees because they were like nothing happened, and I'm like, Banshees of Inisherin is a brilliant.
But you see, we're drawn to the human condition.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. I wouldn't just. There's lots of people that I would not think would like this film.
I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, if you want me to put it bluntly, in literal terms, not a lot happens, but so much happens in their relationship.
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
It's like fascinating relationship.
2 character portraits
and the awkwardness between strangers. And how you get through.
I found it fascinating to watch as studying acting as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was nothing that they did wrong in that. In terms of the technical stuff I'm being taught, they didn't fault at all. Faultless. So it made me feel all types of things. Made me laugh, made me cry, made me everything. So I would give it. I'm 100.
Bang.
I can't really think of why I wouldn't give it 100.
I absolutely loved it. It was a kind of slow grow on me. I don't know what I was expecting when I went in. I think I was expecting it to be a little more, not slapstick, but a little bit more obviously funny than it necessarily was to begin with. But then as I settled into, I find I can watch Jesse Eisenberg just think. I can find him, I can watch him texting on a phone.
And the whole foot thing, sorry. With
the
his
whole
feet
foot thing,
his
astonishing
so
feat.
Funny.
I thought it was just a really beautiful two-hander. My favourite sort of themes that come out of it were watching the ways in which each of them re-evaluated what they thought of how the other one lived their lives and how they did things and the choices they made, and not then thought that's the right one for me, but had a respect for each other's difference. I thought it was lovely to see 2 men in which there was no toxic masculinity. It was just these were 2 raw emotional men feeling things in very different ways about the same woman. I thought in terms of its thematic and its topic of pilgrimage and what had happened to their grandmother, it allows anyone whose people are going through trauma to get on board with it and share in that sort of traumatic pilgrimage to better understand who you are and all that kind of stuff. I did find his story towards the end. I find my experience of the film got tighter and tighter, and it really kind of almost became a sharp arrow that punctured my heart for that final moment. And when I think about the title, A Real Pain, it speaks to the description of him. He's a real pain, I just think that's such a clever title, and I think everything in the film was very underplayed. I think Jesse Eisenberg's directing was purposefully under heavy-handed, and I thought he was every bit. I mean, Kieran's obviously getting all the accolades, and he's gonna win an Oscar and all this kind of stuff. But Jesse is every bit his absolute sort of match. So I would give it. What would I give it? I'm certainly in the 90s. I'd probably give it 95.
Oh, really?
95. I think I could have done with. I wanted more scenes just between the 2 of them without us moving on. I felt it was moving. I felt the same frustration I sometimes feel with being on a tour, which is we have to get up and move on.
But
that's probably the strength of it.
I do think that was part. I think
I had to fight with that feeling as well, because that's kind of what there were things where I was like, I could have done more of that, but then I was like,
but it gave us life.
Because it's what worked.
If you have long lingering scenes where people are talking everything through, I think that would be.
Well, like I was saying, because that's why I loved that final conversation that they have on the roof, where what it could have happened is that they have this really long discussion about all the things that happened in Kieran's life for him to end up the way he has. But he just goes, I really wish he had. All I can think about is you dying on that sofa, and then Kieran just kind of goes, and then like the scene ended.
That's how life is.
That is how life is.
And people have a finite amount of time. People don't have the time, and I think that the vehicle, if you like, of it being a tour, that the pilgrimage was, you just had to keep moving on, and that's how people miss the stuff between.
And it's an interesting, just finally, and it's an interesting film about time and how people manage the time available to them. Jesse was scheduling it to the finest point. Kieran wasn't at all. And who had the more authentic, who had the more kind of, I don't know, sort of meaningful experience on the tour? It's like there are more than one way. There's more than one way to kind of approach this.
So we don't agree with the 5 you took off, do we? We think you should have added 5 to that.
So, but on the final question, what do you think happens to Kieran after the film?
I just hope he doesn't.
I worry he kills himself.
No,
I think he will kill himself.
Yeah, so do I.
No.
Yeah, I do.
Do you really?
Yeah. That was a very sad last shot.
He's self-medicating with booze and drugs. That's only going to go one way.
Maddie's going to enter depression now for another year. Sorry.
That's a sad note to leave it on.